Hi everyone, I'm Adriana Sanchez Dominici, and I am an intern with the Office of Policy and Management's Data and Policy Analytics team, and I will be providing an overview on Connecticut's High Value Data Inventory, which is a data set that can be accessed on the Connecticut Open Data Portal. So I'm going to navigate to the search bar here on the home page and show you what you can search to find the inventory. So I usually just start typing high value, and then the CT High Value Data Inventory will pop up. It'll bring you to the search results page, and even though there's 106 results, the first hit that comes up is actually the data inventory that we're looking for. So we can open this tab up to read more about this data set. So the high value data inventory is a catalog of data assets deemed high value across state agency participants. There are 24 executive branch agencies represented in the current inventory. This inventory is in accordance with Connecticut General Statute Section 4-76P. The inventory is updated on an annual basis, with the most recent update in February of this year, 2024. For the purposes of this inventory, high value is defined as any data that the department head of an agency determines is critical to the operation of an executive branch agency, or can increase branch agency accountability and responsiveness, can improve public knowledge of the executive branch agency, can create economic opportunity, is frequently visited by the public, responds to a need or demand as identified by the agency through public consultation, or is used to satisfy any legislative or other reporting requirements. That is a lengthy and wide-ranging definition of high value. The question I encourage state agencies to think about when they are deciding whether or not a data asset should go into the inventory is to consider the data assets that allow them to do the work that their agency is intended to do. What are the critical applications, systems, or data sets that allow for functional business flow and provide the ability to serve their agency's role? We scroll down a bit here, we can look at some of the metadata that's available for this inventory. So you can see some of the information and tags that briefly describe what you can expect to see in the data set. Further down, we have some numerical metadata about the inventory. It currently contains 1,284 rows and 13 columns. Each row represents one data asset entry, and the number of data assets can change each year depending on the updates from state agencies, whether they decide to delete an asset that's no longer in use or add new data assets. So now we can take a deeper dive into each of the columns that are available to the inventory within the descriptions here. So we have an inventory ID, the agency that owns the asset, business unit, the data asset name, a description of that data asset, whether the data asset is GIS or non-GIS, the structure of that. We hit show all here, we can see the rest of them. We've got a column for location data, demographic data, data classification impact level, policy requirements, data owner, and data steward. To open the data set, you can either just click to this tab here that says data, or you can do actions and query data, and then you get a different view of the data that I think is a little clearer. So if we just scroll this down here, we can go ahead and see the columns. If you've reviewed, used, or participated in updating the high-value data inventory in years prior, you might note that some of the columns look new or renamed. This past year, OPM refreshed both the process in which the high-value data inventory updates are collected and some of the type of data that is collected. For example, let's look at one of these new columns that are required, the data classification impact level. This column is where we ask state agencies to classify their data assets based on the level of impact they would anticipate in the event of a breach of that particular data asset. So we see here low has been reported for the first few items in this inventory. So for these data assets associated with BizNet, we anticipate a low impact level in the event of a breach. So that's how we would interpret that column there. So the levels in this column range from low to medium and then high depending on the level of impact the agency deems appropriate. So some other columns of interest here again are the GIS or non-GIS. So this helps us to identify some of the GIS data assets that exist across the executive branch state agencies. We also have these columns on location and demographic data. When we collect the information for these columns, there's some drop downs, and you're also allowed to write in some other components of location or demographic data. So this just kind of tells you for a particular data asset what type of demographic data might exist in that data asset. Same sort of idea for the location data column, where you can see what type of location data specifically exists within that data asset. So like any other data set within the Open Data Portal, you can go ahead and export a copy of this inventory if it is of interest to do any research on the high value data assets that exist across the state. You can also use this data set to really get an understanding of how much high value data each state agency is reporting. And another thing to point out here is that you can get information about who to contact with respect to your questions regarding the high value data inventory. So those are just some of the things that might be of interest with respect to this inventory. So we go back to the primer here. So thank you for joining me for this overview of the high value data inventory on Connecticut's Open Data Portal. Bye-bye.